So LFM's goals coming into playoffs is just trying to get, that BlizzCon spot. I think versus Endemic, last time we 3-0'd them, that was only because they were missing 2 of their players. Like, I'm glad that everything's okay with both of them and they're back into the playoffs. So we'll get a real rematch to see like which team is better. And honestly, I think this series will go 3-2 and it can go either way depending, who shows up that day.
I feel like LFM has really improved over the last couple of weeks. I feel like Dark Chimera coming in as their support player, I feel like he kind of like revitalized that team and brought a lot of positive energy. I feel like ever since we saw him get picked up, they've been a much stronger team. I think Fury's a really solid player. I feel like on that team, he's really stepped up in like the captain shot caller role, which makes me happy, right? Like I value Fury as a friend. So it's been really cool for me to watch his progression as a player and as a person. So I mean, going into this series, we're definitely looking to play our best. I mean, I feel like we're a team, if we show up on the day of, we could run the whole bracket, but we also could be a team that get 3-0'd in the first round.
Dreadnought, Michael Udall acknowledging some of the potential inconsistencies we've had with this team. It was one thing he noted at the beginning of Phase 2 was, I'm trying to find a consistent balance with any of the teams that I've been on. They've struggled. They had that sub, and let's go right into that because Fury, he mentioned that when I talked to him. He's like, look, the last time we played them, it was double sub weekend. It's kind of hard to take much away from that. The one thing for them that gave them a series victory, that helped them get towards the playoffs. But more importantly, if there was a tie between LFM and Simplicity in that final week, that was a 3-0 for LFM, so that would have been the first tiebreaker beyond a few others. So that was a very important weekend for LFM, but Fury recognizes that might not have been, hey, we know they were at their weakest at that point, but he still feels confident coming in here.
And I think to hear that level of confidence from his end and then maybe the lack thereof from Mike Udall at the very end there, I look at this and again, even more so feel like that responsibility is on the shoulders of Endemic when looking at this series because again, they knew they were taking some risks with some of the changes and things coming in, and consistency has been a problem for most of the rosters that Mike Udall has ended up finding them in, but we've now gone through the end of the year, everything coming down to this, and I feel like LFM, they've always been that team that goes, we may not have the results, but we truly believe in ourselves, and now is their moment to really shine.
The talent is there for both these teams. Let's get into this. It's time to find out what battleground we're going to start on. First, we'll take a look at the bans. LFM will take Cursed Hollow out of the equation. Endemic will remove Volskaya, and we will start things on Sky Temple, Dreadnought, a map that is macro-heavy. Endemic, which, depending on how things go here, when Endemic played against Team Freedom, they came out with a clear macro strategy or anti-macro strategy. Both of these teams have played on this battleground. That we've seen different strategies evolve throughout. But this is one that when you get ahead and you get ahead early, it's very difficult for the opposing team to come back.
Yeah, it's been a battleground that has kind of fallen out of flavor when looking at the entirety of North America. But one of the few teams still willing to stick to it seems to be that of Endemic. And I feel I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but that only furthers some of these concerns here. That fact that they're willing to stick to a battleground that is so clear-cut when it comes to win conditions. That consistency is a lot easier on a battleground like Sky Temple because it does very much enforce it with you get that snowball. If that works in favor of Endemic, that is a positive. But again, I think that depending on how this plays out, I'm not so convinced when it comes to the results here for Sky Temple.
One of the most exciting things for me was everybody that I talked to this week said that we don't know what the meta is yet. Everybody, we've seen this evolution over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Some improvisational picks, some changes towards double support, the lack of a tank in most situations in terms of the traditional tank. The setups are not there. But Dreadnought, this is something you bring up often. Sky Temple, it might not necessarily depend too much on composition if you can control the wave clear and get the early game advantages. So this one, do you feel as confident saying, hey, we can go double support here because you're going to give up something to get that double support?
Yeah, the biggest thing is the lack of chip damage with a double support too. It's not the old Ariel Volatile Acidar where you take out a front wall for free. It's very, very kind of slowly whittling away at those front walls, and I don't think that the double support does support as well, that style of play here on Sky Temple. We do get the Tyrande pick up here from LFM. We'll see if Endemic wants to respond with the white main. Been a very common rotation from them.
We have seen that if you don't pick the white main in this rotation, that the team that first picks Tyrande will go into that double support role with those two of the highest damage dealing supports that we have in terms of hero damage, not necessarily the wave clear.
Endemic commit to the white main and a Johanna. Pretty high Johanna there, but as we've talked about, pretty well, good response to the Tyrande. And normally I only say that this is a high Johanna because normally into a Tyrande I'd be like, this is a perfect response, I get it. It's just that the Battleground does not endorse a Johanna playstyle. Macro is a thing in the late game and in a very different matter. It's not so much that wave clear at the late stages, so we'll see how that works out here for Endemic.
B-Kid, the majority of his heroes, almost 70–80% of the two heroes that he's played, Johanna and Murden. We're going to get the follow. We got the Droplets follow last week in Dreadnought. He massacred people. I mean, he's like, look, just give me some help here. I'll make things happen. I don't know if this is indicative that we don't get a Tassadar, maybe something for some extra shielding or double support, because Vala by herself, mind you, Genji is still not picked up.
Yeah.
But Vala by herself is as fragile as they come.
Yeah.
It's like a knife's edge of I'll either kill you and we'll trade out, or I might die. And that's where Vala comes in, where the added support is needed.
Yeah, I actually think that it has to be some kind of extra, additional factor there, like the Tassadar. So much so that I was wondering if Endemic was going to maybe look for a power play on that in the second ban phase, but being a little bit more fearful of the Zul counterplay with the Tyrande pickup.
If it comes out, we'll see. When I talked to Fury explicitly, he said, I've been practicing X hero and Y hero this week. He's like, it's wild right now. And I think that there is something that might come in here for the draft of LFM. Dread, it's all bets are off at this point. I mean,
nothing to lose.
It's playoff time. You can't hold anything back. You got to come out swinging from the very beginning. We've seen the drafts change so much. Octalis has kind of started to work into that double support, the really non-normal tank style. We'll see if Endemic can target that.
Raynor and Deckard here, pick up for Endemic.
That's double.
Yeah, it's a very slow playstyle, though, from them that doesn't necessarily cater to Sky Temple that well. Yeah. If they get on the objective itself, you are not pushing this comp out. They're just like, this is our home. Good luck trying to deal with this. Johanna double support with a Raynor DPS in the back. That's a hard time. But if you fall behind, your recovery in the game significantly slower as well. I have concerns here now. We'll see if LFM can find a way to punish here. What do we get? Lucio Rhaegar.
Hold on, 1 minute.
That's got to be Bloodlust.
Okay, you pick two supports. Oh, okay, that can't be right. That can't be right. It's like you pick two supports, we'll just pick three. I'm checking.
Yeah, we're trying to check chat to make sure we know what the player's thought process is here, because as we're getting an admin in to determine what is going on currently. Yeah, 3 supports. Look, I'm all down for some Tyrande, Rhaegar, True Shot, Bloodlust kind of hybrid innovation, but once you put a third on top of it, I mean, where's the damage come from? I don't care how much auto attack damage you give me, or attack speed.
Yeah, we'll check on that in a moment. I don't think that's, I'm not even going to write it down yet. I'm just going to wait and see. But the Ray and Deckard, let's go back to your point. Because we see the Tyrande, and you mentioned the Johanna is a good counter because you need to get damage out normally by way of auto attacks to get that reset on your Q, on your healing. And then you also have Vala. She does have good burst damage in the Hungering Arrow and the multi-shot, but it is really about just moving all the way through there, staying alive, and keeping up the hot pursuit potentially at level 1. That's hard to do when you're blinded half the time. Yeah, and that's where the Johanna really comes into play.
Yeah, the Johanna pickup and the commit to a double support expectedly, right? With the Vala pickup, I thought was honestly bold. The fact that they pick up Vala in the 2-3 before the second ban phase, it seems honestly a little bit surprising here from LFM. Droplets did put it on a clinic last week, but with that Johanna, I do think that auto attacks are going to be a little bit too problematic there for them. But I don't know, considering the Battleground, if it's as concerning as the double support already committed with the slow play on the side of Endemic. I just see that the first couple of shrines, if they aren't very, very profitable, this game gets out of control pretty quickly, and suddenly it becomes the where does Endemic come back in this game?
We still have to figure out what these last few picks are, but if you take a Vala and an early night camp and push a top lane Dreadnought, Johanna does do well. One of the best not just tanks, but one of the best heroes at saying, okay, this is a massive wave you have coming at us, minions, the camp, everything. You pull them in by that level, you're level 4, you get Sins exposed.
Yeah.
Most likely you can help with that clear. But when I look at Raynor, when I look at Deckard,
yeah,
it's not exactly screaming wave clear to me. So if you want to get aggressive early, that could be an interesting point for LFM.
Yeah, and that just brings up some of the small intricacies of Johanna that I think everybody knows to a certain extent, but you know, until you see it highlighted here, you maybe never totally understand that she has one of the best wave clears of any warrior, but it's not solely through her. She enables a lot of people to be better at wave clear because of her. And this is those moments where we see, because there's so little of enabled and good wave clear behind it, it's like, is the Johanna really that necessary of like a wave clear advantage? Though it is Sky Temple, we talked about the justification behind the Johanna. It's a very different reason here, but I still think it does have some of the concerns that you need to expectedly kind of get that snowball, especially considering the night camp on top, when you know Droplets is going to be sitting there just pew-pewing with Hot Pursuit.
I know everybody's waiting. We're getting clarification on a few things, and we're letting the admins work that out in the back, so we'll analyze the parts of the draft that we do have. We saw a few interesting picks. The Rhaegar Lucio doesn't exactly scream the standard composition when you already had the Tyrande support, so we will figure that out. But we're actually going to figure that out in a moment. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, then we'll come back, and we'll get this series underway. Don't go anywhere. Appreciate your patience while we figure a few things out. Those picks will, in fact, be locked in here to get things started going into game number 1. So the picks that we have is, we'll get our graphic updated here in a moment, but Tyrande, Yrel, Vala. And at the end of that draft, we saw the Rhaegar, Lucio, coming in. There was some confusion on those sides, but we got it squared away. We'll be ready to head into game number 1. Dread, a triple support, not something we see too often.
Not something we see too often. There could be maybe a world where you can argue going with, man, it's been a while since I've even indulge in the thought process. Reverse amp, maybe to be able to get the slow at the exact same time while you're amplifying the overall team damage output, slowing them while being able to speed up your team while everybody's bloodlust. It might be the go-to here. I have a hard time looking at this composition and saying that they can't go bloodlust. I don't know if they have the cross-supporting enough or at least damage output overall with the triple support to not go into the bloodlust here.
Did you catch the last pick for Endemic after the Deckard, or was that logged
I don't believe
in?
so.
I don't think we got that. Okay, so we are going to get back into that. Yeah, we're going to get that. We still have to get the last pick from Endemic, and over here we're kind of recreating things to make sure that everything is official. So we'll have that last pick. I mean, we look at the side of Endemic. They've already gone the double support. They have the White Mane, Johanna, Raynor, Deckard, as we'll get into that momentarily. I mean, they could use somebody in the off lane, somebody to really amplify the wave clear.
Yeah, that's
to control the battleground against this style.
That's the biggest thing now. Is a lot of the concerns I had about Endemic's composition just dropped, purely based on the fact that LFM has so little damage when it comes to front wall output here, between the Vala being the sole damage output for them, that it should be very realistic that Endemic wins the snowball, wins the overall team fight even as well. I feel like with this composition. And that is only going to get furthered here, as we did end up getting the final pick is actually Varian here for Endemic, further amplifying the difficult, the struggles really of the composition of LFM.
It's hard to take down a Varian in this situation.
It's near impossible, actually, because nobody has damage.
It's interesting because we saw the evolution of some of the drafts when Octalysis came back from the Western Clash. We're like, Zul main tank, yeah, okay, use that against LFM in week number 6. Ended up playing out, and everybody's like, yeah, can we take this seriously? Octalysis is, yeah, you're definitely taking this seriously. They've run it, doing things their way, and then other teams have started to adapt. We saw it in Europe a little with the main tank Zul. We've seen double support start to come back and be far more prevalent. And then in week 9, it was Heroes Heart. They're like, well, we qualified for BlizzCon. Let's have some fun. And then we saw McIntyre Twin Blades Varian.
Yeah.
And it actually looked good.
It seems like it's gaining momentum. Slowly but surely, she's coming in and, you know, making a name for itself there with the Twin Blades Variant. I think it is kind of that off-lane replacement. It's like, well, if you have nobody that can actually lock down and get the kill, he's one of the hardest to deal with. He very much is the modern-day Illidan.
If you can't punish the lane either, that's the other thing. It's not like Varian has great wave clear, but if you don't have great wave clear on the other side, then I don't have to worry about you pushing into that wall. So there are some things to play around. There's a lot of boss control later. You can always sneak off the Varian and try and solo that or two-man that. So there are some counterplays here. Sky Temple, we've mentioned it before. It's a very unique map, as a lot of our battlegrounds are. So playing around different things, we'll see how these teams do it. It's time to get into game number 1 here. Endemic versus LFM.
Where we're going to have Dansky here on the Raynor for Endemic, where Cure will be our Variant. Unsure if it's going to be Twin Blade or Taunt. We'll find out. Big Impact supporting the team here on White Mane. Mikey Dahl still sticking on the support there. And he's on Deckard Kane, and the Big Impact, or B-Kid, excuse me, on Johanna.
Well, I mentioned maybe some interesting picks. I don't think this is what LFM had in mind, but we will have Fury. He will be on the Rhaegar. Swabs will be on Yrel. Droplets on that Vala. We'll be relying a lot on him. Figgy will be on Lucio, leaving Dark Chimera on Tyrande.
Talent adjustments I expect through this game to be able to deal with this composition would be a lot of any damage output opportunities from Rhaegar, as he is one of the highest damage output supports that exists, along with Tyrande possibly having the opportunity to go with the True Shot aura. I can see arguments against True Shot, though, just purely based on the blind. Make it a little bit too difficult to want to all in your talent investment towards those auto attacks.
I started to wonder here, with the amount of supports, it's highly unlikely when we see the High King's quest that you would go anything other than Twin Blades.
Yeah.
But if it were indeed the taunt, that level 1 for Tyrande that can remove silences, I thought maybe he was holding on to that talent pick instead, just going for more healing output in general. As we'll see the siege camp underway here by Endemic.
And so Jay Howe, because of the Twin Blades variant being picked up by Endemic, and already how well-rounded I feel like the composition was from Endemic, though I felt it was slow, and that was only because of macro pressure, which LFM now doesn't have the opportunity to really be able to commit to. I think that LFM needs to be extremely efficient over this first shrine phase. Normally, we say that it helps get the snowball into your control, but once Varian hits 7, this game gets different. Once he has the opportunity to self-sustain, he is not going to fear almost anybody on LFM's side of the battleground, especially considering the post-10. But post-10, they can heroic adjust enough to win skirmishes, making this first fight that always happens 4 through 5 very, very, very high impact here for LFM. And they're trying to set the tone here with this night camp.
Yeah, the Varian Twin Blades is nice for damage output, but as you mentioned, that level 7 is where it's all of a sudden like, wait a minute, I can't trade into this as well as I thought anymore. So we'll see how that plays out. Both teams, well, one of them did pick up their night camp. We'll see the adjustment and how those rotations come out as we see that rotation mid. And now we see Endemic picking up theirs. How much aggression we'll see towards that top lane. Improvisation, Dreadnought, with these traps, I'd say is paramount to these teams' success, and mostly on the side of LFM.
Yeah, and I think it may be even in-game itself here at this point in time from LFM here, but the diversity still showing there as we get the True Shot Aura picked up at level 4 for Tyrande. Going to be part of their decision-making here. Now 20 seconds out from what I consider to be a very crucial Temple phase. Night Camp already pushing on top 4 Endemic, setting themselves up to be primed and ready to pick up a couple of free shots in the northern lane. LFM, though, control vision over eye, which can help with the rotations. And talking about rotations, we haven't even talked about Figgy on that Lucio. Really can help out with the transitions from mid to top.
Yeah, but right now, I mentioned earlier in the draft was the defense on the side of Endemic, and then once LFM had this draft locked in, Dread, they are struggling to defend against this camp, and this top temple has barely even been channeled, which means this top 4, once it goes down, watch the experience jump on that status bar at the top. That is where snowballs on Sky Temple start, and it's not where they end. So when that goes down, that will give them a major boost, and it's more of the long play towards level 10 and the second temple as BK just walking forward fearlessly.
Got a lot of value there out of that Condemn and the slow afterwards here. Shot still being contained by LFM throughout mid, but the rest of Endemic now trying to stop that as Fury soaking up through the mid lane. Something you're probably never going to see ever again is the fact that Fury is on a Rhaegar. Man, still hard to really understand that. Swabs, though, gets the knockback here. Confirms the rest of the shots here on mid, but does it come at a cost?
Well, we're going to see some lockdown attempts there. Swab's able to walk out of there. We did see the Emerald picked up, so that will deny some healing by Deckard Cain, as we saw there. If you can time that, you can keep an eye on Lucio. Lucio has great healing output when he amps it up. Outside of that, it's just the little baby heals. So some potential denial there, but then you have to contest with, you've got a Rhaegar, you've got a Tyrande. Dreadnought, as much as I think Ancestral is a great tool, this feels like it almost has to be a bloodless game.
Yeah, I very much think it does need to be. Even though I don't look at that and go, that is a maybe necessarily a clear win condition. I just go, looking at Lucio, Tyrande, and Rhaegar, somebody's got to make up for that supporting capability and damage output elsewhere. Hold on, though. They find Cure. He can auto-attack and self-sustain for quite some time here, but the crowd control is going to be a little bit too much. First blood here over to LFM with the triple support gang squad. Something I don't know if I'd ever thought I'd say out loud.
This is one of those games where you kind of queue up, you see your comp, and you're like, okay, this is a thing, and you roll with it. LFM, they're trying to make it work here in game number 1, and that's a good start as we are rapidly approaching level 10 and the second temple phase.
And I just want to bring it to mentality here for a moment, because think about the situation. You're LFM, first time ever making it outside of the Crucible into playoffs, and then you have, you know, a kind of awkward draft going into game number 1. The fact that you find yourself proactively making plays on the battleground like this here on the bottom lane as the cleanse coming through, but finding that first kill could mean a lot mentally for this team. Because, yeah, when I saw that happen, I originally went, that is the playoffs for LFM. That draft alone was enough for them to get tilted out of their minds, but they're sticking into this here and even landing the Lunar Flare onto Mike Udall and setting things up well.
That's the thing, the mentality of these teams. Michael Udall acknowledges that they could at times struggle, and they are there. But every time I talk to Fury, and it has been no matter what during Phase 2, when he's been on this roster, Dreadnought, he has never wilted under the assumption that we are playing for the playoffs, and if we get there, we might be able to make a run. That has been the mentality as they get a stun on to Cure. His 10s are picked up. There's the rain. There's the bloodlust. Fury going in, trying to get some lockdown. Cure goes with that charge at level 10, allowing him to charge to allies now. That will be a fort confirmed. but the Temple being channeled by Endemic.
Yeah, big win here for Endemic, taking a 4 versus 4, baiting out a Bloodlust, which is a very long cooldown, not a heroic we talk about too often, and that's part of the reason it's not played as often too. Its heroic is a long period of time. If we see Bloodlust used, minimum 1 of 2 other heroics have to be used here. Hold up though, Dark Chimera trying to get the peel away. Nice cleanse there out from Fury. First time on the support role, and he makes it look good as they end up getting the retreat there and forcing the Starfall. But that was what I was going to say needs to be used. If you get Lust, you have to have Sound Barrier or Starfall, preferably Starfall, because it ensures the team fight for LFM. They cannot take a fight and walk away from it. Gust used to be the go-to against Bloodlust. That is how good of a heroic it can be, as long as you get the fight you want.
We got Lornado to buy space. See if it's going to be enough. The rotations, this is one thing that look, call me crazy, right? Because I see compositions and you know, you hear, look, I like to have some fun with some of the theory crafting and how you play the game. It's fun to see the rotations. You mentioned the chip damage earlier. It's not exactly there, but Urel coming over, Fury comes over, just everything that you can amass on a map like Sky Temple affects the objective, and that's one point that's missed. They were able to take down that bottom tower, that wall, and almost that top tower on this wall, and they've just kept up the rotations. You have to respond at some point, and Endemic has failed to respond to that, and that is something minor, but the fact that LFM is approaching this game differently shows that improvisation is a thing.
I very much agree with you here, and honestly, I'm surprised that they've been able to hold their own so far. We're yet to see a full 5-on-5 skirmish, but this game hasn't gotten out of control in the early game, and that is not something I expected to say here throughout this game. Figgy, though, going to take some pressure there from Cure. He's got to boop and amplify that movement speed there. He'll be able to make it out. Whereas we await here the next Shrine phase. Bottom lane, as you talked about some of the rotations there, Fury's kind of been that unique off-lane sieger for the team, and understandably so. Rhaegar, again with that Lightning Shield, one of the higher DPS heroes.
There's no global, and one thing that I think we have to highlight is that we've seen teams, and it's been very rare because we don't get a lot of Bloodlust, but you can use Bloodlust to burst down a boss, and when you were in a top-bottom temple position with no global on the map, that's a threat, and I think Endemic had to rotate down to deal with that for the fear of that. On the other side, you do have that Varian with the Twin Blades, 2 out of 3 of his quests completed so far.
Another thing that Bloodlust compositions provide a little bit different than other characters in other compositions that, you know, considering win conditions, Jay, how is just the core itself. Backdooring capabilities with Bloodlust, it drastically increase. And because Sky Temple usually always reliably opens at least one condition here, I can see maybe an attempt to backdoor later on if things get a little bit hairy here for LFM. But for now, the trade over the shots, bottom being consumed by Endemic. They find themselves a Swab who's kind of out on an island. He's going to have to pop something here if he wants to live. He's going to hold on to that Ardent Defender.
Boss call.
Yeah, it's
all day.
Sacrificing his own life there, understandably so, but it's going to cost there at least the start here of the boss.
Well, this is going to be a tough defense because they have Siege Giants that are already pushing. You see the adaptation, Vala and Rhaegar on the mini-map, they're trying to get the lanes pushed out to empower, keep up an experience, and try and get stuff down. But when all this is said and done, Dread, that is a very tough defense that they will have in the bottom lane because the Temple, once it gets through that middle fort, will start firing on this bottom lane and just empowering this push. This is a very real threat, the same way that you mentioned Varian is like Illidan. If he gets on a core himself, that is scary and a real threat to do more than just the keep.
So we'll see how much LFM can actually defend here over this bottom boss while the rest of the shots being picked up there by that Deckard Cain. Though this is going to be a pretty easy response from this point in time, and you see the damage for Endemic happening through mid, I still want to shout out towards LFM. Their damage control over these situations and the 2-man split towards middle keep front wall and trying to mitigate some of the damage there. It may be the difference between a win and a loss in this game if LFM can find a way to recover here. But with the 16 just around the corner of Endemic, it's unlikely to be the case.
Have a moment of calm in this game. The rotations have been frenzied. Everybody is making a rotation on the map. I anticipated Endemic to push there. They simply went mid. They got a tower, which gives them a nice chunk of XP and gives them more of that chip damage to put in. Get some of that down, get more value out of the next temple, take away one of the win conditions with the boss, and we look at the experience by way of those rotations. They find themselves up about 3/4 of a level, so it's hard to fault them in that.
Endemic trying to demand some answers out of LFM here on the bottom half with that 16 talent here. This is a smart call because of the positioning of LFM, but if they want to Starfall all in this, they can defend this pretty well. There comes the Starfall. No Rhaegar in position to get the Bloodlust and defend this as the 16's picked up. Pure still diving away at that as the banner ends up going down. Condemned to be able to get the peel along with the Iron Skin. And LFM unable to hold that back. But if everybody, all 5 had been there, I actually think that that may be a defensible situation.
I'm really curious, Dreadnought. We are single temple in the next one. That bottom temple, this is such an interesting point of contention. We've seen the skirmishes, we've seen the 3v3, the 2v2s, we've seen it all, but now it's time to have the 5-on-5. This is where it's unavoidable. For Endemic, they'll pick up their camp to match this. I just wonder if Endemic says, look, we got enough of a lead off that last keep that maybe we don't have to contest as hard. You find a moment, see if you can get it. If you don't, you back off. I'm really curious on how these teams are going to approach these next 30 to 45 seconds.
I agree. It is going to be extremely interesting here, and it's even more so considering we don't get the totem at 16 there for Fury to help the advance. They're going to rely on Figgy as he comes in with that boop. They end up picking the clear here onto that fort as the Lunar Flare goes down. Doesn't end up landing. Swab's getting the knockback. Cure trying to find a way as the Bloodlust goes down. Big 4-man Condemn coming out there from B-Kid. Now he's on full retreat. There's the Lord NATO, and suddenly Cure is going to turn things around here as the retreat here from LFM.
See if they can hold now. LFM on the back foot. They're going to be missing out on a couple of heroics. We'll see if Endemic comes in. On top of that, Condemn, right before that, I think was a 5-person blind. That was just clutch play by B-Kid to come in there and find the proper angle. Now LFM, they're going in. They've got one target isolated. Biggie, he's surviving. He's going to somehow stay alive as Whitemane as the Starfall comes down and the fight continues as Cure somehow survives. B-Kid comes in with a blessed shield.
Swab's leaping back, giving more armor, but look at that. Scrollless ceiling is going to lock down 3 members there. A lot of damage output there as the banner is the focus for LFM. Big impact, no mana, has to get the retreat, and Jhow, triple support, sustain, eventually winning here in favor of LFM. Endemic now questioning if they can reposture up as Big Impact did get the tap. They go in. Cure finds a little bit of damage onto Droplets, but the slow, a lot of damage. The leap out from Swabs, the cleanse coming through from Rhaegar, and Droplets trying to kite away, unable to do so. Cure finds the pick they need.
He had to stay alive, but now it could be all downhill from here. Dark Chimera falls. Nice stun there. 5-man stun by Swabs. That might have actually been enough to stop that fight, but maybe save the game. If LFM gets tracked down in that situation, that probably looks far worse. Endemic, they'll move forward. They have the minions. They have the Twin Blades variant. They'll move in here. They'll take down keep number 2 in a moment. Bala up in 15 seconds. They get one more pick here. This might be lights out.
I think it might be game no matter what if that Illidan wants to get a little bit more hyphy and threaten things. Rhaegar, though, kind of on an island for a moment. Cure on the other side of the wall. Going to just take that side wall, make his way out. Just comfortable and fine here. Endemic just ripping apart the base of LFM and closing in on that 20. There's one window remaining for LFM to take a team fight. Without the boss available, not too much major incentive for Endemic to posture over it, but it's up in about 5 seconds. And Jhow, if I'm LFM, I'm starting that boss as fast as I can.
You cannot wait for 20. Endemic will be there before long, so this might be the last chance. All of your heroics are available. This might be your last stand. They make their way over to the boss. Endemic, they could conceivably concede this. This is the only way they can throw is by throwing on the boss. See how they hold here. Endemic, they're moving in. They're scouting it out with the Raider. They see everything here. No 20. This is going to be it, Dread.
They go in there on the boss before at about 30% HP. Lunar Flare ends up dropping. Boss Slam going to be proc. The banner drop there now from Cure as it falls down below 5%. Swabs is going to be the man who moves up. He gets the knockback there. A little bit of percentages. He's the focus here. Huge Bloodlust going to hit all 5 members. Cure is now the focus from LFM as they're trying to knock back off of the point. Droplets survives by ½ inch of his health there. Ardent Defender already used. Everybody still on top of it as another condemned boss goes over to LFM. 1-for-1 here between the two teams as Scrollless Ceiling drops. Jhow, double support, triple support. Vala, they might be able to push.
Droplets gets the auto in on that Siege Giant. I thought they might have gone in. He's going to go in. There's going to be the vault in. Trying to look for another kill, but the scroll comes down. It's a 1-for-1 trade. Catapults are on the core of LFM. That is 2. There will be a 3rd momentarily. Fury back to defend, but the Siege Giant plus the boss now coming in here in the bottom lane. Johanna's still available to blind a lot of the damage that comes out from LFM, but the boss was picked up. 20 almost here. See how much LFM can survive, but here comes the Lornado.
Lornado through. Figgy trying to retreat, but look at that lashes out from Big Impact. The 13 and the Herodric Cube locks it in, gets the kill there. Great job coming out from Endemic and save what was a monumental push opportunity and maybe moment of recovery here. As Big Impact, B-Kid sniffs out Dark Chimera, uses the Iron Skin. He may want to pursue this a little bit longer.
Yeah, Fury dipped off to try and start onto that. Dark Chimera, as long as he's not getting blinded, did have the owl for the slow, but B-Kid says, I've got one too. We'll see if we can get the root opportunity, but nice priority target. Fury comes in, have some support from Droplets as B-Kid turning his attention directly there.
Blessed goes down. A lot of focus onto Droplets as he ends up getting the Bloodlust. Heraldric Cube does end up proccing as the Emerald was used there. You see Droplets, no healing opportunity, but not going to be the case anymore. The keeps are down. Top Shots are going to have enough to get almost enough for a game here as LFM use their last stand over these middle shots as their core slowly falling. So much so Raynor even looking to get a backdoor onto that.
Well, he's being met by Lucio. It doesn't matter. Bala has fallen. Dark Chimera is going to hold on point, buy some time, but he will be the next to fall. 3 members down on the side of LFM, and the Temple's firing despite that kill. This is going to be Endemic going up 1 game in our best of 5. I don't think I thought I would ever really commentate a game with 5 supports, but
you did.
That's one off.